Hey man, nice to see you.
Great to see you again, man. So, let's maybe start with a short intro from you. We would love to get the community to know you a little bit, and then we can dive in. You can share your screen, and I'll be here with you, asking hopefully not stupid questions.
Uh, there's no such thing as stupid questions, especially with AI. Things are moving so quickly, and that's kind of why we're here today. I'm I want to just kind of preface this by saying, thank you for having me on. It's funny. We actually met on the street corner in Buenos Aires as you were entering an Uber, and it was just by chance that we became friends. So it's cool to get to do this. But yeah, my name's Alex Bowman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Voyager. I've also been an agency owner and designer for over 15 years. I've been very, very focused on building and scaling small to medium sized companies across every single vertical. I'm based in Denver, and I've always been curious about technology and trying to be at the cutting edge as much as I possibly can. Another thing that I want to share is that I'm not a software engineer. I didn't go to school for software engineering. I I I mean, I have a degree in an associate degree in computer engineering, but this is not like I became a dev and then I've been a dev for like 15 years. So what I'm going to communicate today is something that I feel is like very down to earth that pretty much anybody could do with enough determination. It's not something that you need to be an insane full stack engineer to be able to go out and do.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll just kind of go through the slides here. Let's see.
Yeah, great. Um, okay. Let's see, I think we can see it. And also, if you don't
Okay.
mind, I'll try to ask questions from my perspective as well. I guess a lot of people in the audience as well are using different stocks, but I guess the things that we're gonna learn here are gonna be useful for, I guess, any stock. Even though we're gonna focus on Perplexity and Google Cloud.
Right. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about building intelligent systems. I think there's a bit of an echo. There we go. Um, this is something that I actually built for myself to be able to better go out and execute and build things that I've been trying to build for a very long time. We've kind of had a number of different technologies that have come out over the last couple of years that have been more like assistants versus being able to build full stack. But there's a number of problems with that, and we're going to go into some of those problems. But this is really all about how you can build something that will scale, that you can keep forever, that will ultimately fight against the hallucinations, and then something that you can actually own going into the future. So when I first started getting into agentic coding, I'm sure, like most of you, I was using ChatGPT, and then Claude came out, and I was like, damn, I'm very impressed with Claude. And then ChatGPT released a new model, and then I was back in the game with them. And then I started thinking about this, and I was like, actually, I bet there's some nuance to these models, and I bet they're good at different things. And I discovered that ChatGPT was really good at at writing code, and Claude was better at doing the research component. And now we're just getting into this future where we're just using a mixture of both. Um, what I was also noticing was that there were limitations to all of these different models. Of course, you're getting hallucinations. It's telling you things that like as gospel, right? And then you find out later that it was completely wrong. And I also want to preface this whole conversation with uh, saying that I'm also in the same boat. I'm not an expert on any of this by any means. This is just something that I've discovered and been working on over the last several months, and had a moderate amount of success, I would say, compared to some other platforms that I've seen, due to some of these unlocks that we're going to talk about. The main unlock was using Perplexity Computer. So if you're unfamiliar, Perplexity is a platform where you can leverage all of the frontier models simultaneously. You can go into, it's just like ChatGPT, but you can go in and you can select exactly which model you want to use, or you can use several of them at the same time with their model console feature, and then it'll compare and contrast the different answers that you get, which is very, very helpful if you're working on anything that's mission critical. But what I really liked about it was it felt like it had a much larger context window. I felt that the $20 version of ChatGPT would often forget what it was working on, and it would just kind of be spinning its wheels, and you would end up having to be like, hey, reminding it, no, this is what we're doing. Or it would pull context from a different project while you're working on something for a different client, and it didn't really feel that intuitive. So that was the first unlock, was just getting to Perplexity Computer, which is their version of, I guess you could say, their version of OpenClaw. Um, so OpenClaw is multi-agent orchestration that can run on your notebook inside of your own file system. That we'll get into that later on some of the security concerns that has. But I thought that running this in the cloud was just a much more appropriate way for us to be able to have this as we scale. In the really early days, this was in the fall of 2025. I started working on my first agentic coding project, if you will. I was using a website that was exploding at the time called Emergent, and what I found was it was creating these these incredible working prototypes, or semi working prototypes. But once I started getting into it, I realized that it wasn't actually working. Nothing underneath was actually wired, and it constantly made mistakes. So, we could set up the user onboarding, but then once I got into the dashboard and starting to build out some of the more advanced features, it would make a mistake, and then it would go back in. It would burn $100 worth of tokens. It would make another mistake, and then we would just go in circles. And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to pause here and just shelf this, because I know that this is possible, but there are some limitations that we're running into, and it's not quite there yet for me to be able to actually reach a production ready app. Not necessarily in one shot, but even if you kept prompting it, the problem was that the code size would get too big, would be untenable for the model to be able to realistically digest, and then you just wouldn't end up being able to produce anything meaningful with it. Yeah, so everything was really slow. Every single round trip adds up, and then if you give it any kind of big task, you would see it would really struggle, because it didn't have the kind of sequential operating procedure that it needed to be able to run through a lot of these bigger tasks. You're kind of seeing that if you've used Fable 5. That's what it's really, really good at, is these really big, longer tasks that have multiple steps. And then also the agents didn't seem to remember what we were working on. It would often hallucinate. It would give you answers that were plausible but didn't really align with exactly what you were talking about. It would often it would invent, this is my favorite thing, it would just invent APIs that don't exist. I'd be like reviewing code base and seeing things that I'm like, I don't understand where this is coming from. So that can be very frustrating as you're trying to debug and work through some of those things. So I started using Perplexity Computer a few months ago. I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago when it first came out. There's a creator that I follow on Instagram at RPN. You should definitely follow him. He's at the cutting edge of all things AI and creativity. And he was talking about how you could do multi-agent orchestration using Perplexity. Um, and when I first started getting into it, I realized that there were still some limitations. Originally, I was using Git. I was, kind of pushing everything to GitHub, and then, having it go back in, read the code base, and then come back to me for approval, and then I would push, and then it was just this constant amount of friction with GitHub. I was also using Vercel because I was told that that was a good idea. Was not using, I'm calling all these different databases and trying to build the front end, and it. I'm sure a lot of you have run into these issues where you're just like, you'll get to a point and two of the APIs are not communicating properly, and it's a pain in the ass to fix, and you'll spend an hour just trying to fix one nitpicky little issue before you can continue your work. So I started thinking about this a little deeper, and what I came up with was, I was like, hey, I wonder if I could just run this all in the cloud in its own environment, build a virtual machine on Google Cloud, and use SSH as a secure bridge that would essentially remove the guardrails for the agents to just work in a contained environment. And that was the major breakthrough that I had, was just running Perplexity inside of GCP. And what that unlocks is you can do incredible things in a very, very short amount of time. From, if I was just using ChatGPT, something that might have taken a few days to get through, and manual review, going back and forth, and just kind of sending it screenshots or dropping in stuff from the terminal and saying, hey, can you fix this? That's going to take days. If you're using agents without their own environment, this would be, if you're just running Perplexity on its own, you can still accomplish things, but it's still going to take you like a full day to get through certain types of tasks. But if you get into this type of a setup, you can run things much, much faster. There are things, I know I put 30 minutes here, and this is like being conservative. If you've got the agents set up properly and running inside the cloud, you can get them to do pretty much whatever you want in one shot, and then go back in and clean it up, and it's good to go. I'm not going to say it's production ready, or fully secure, but you can go from zero to a working prototype in the fastest time that I've seen so far.
Maybe just a question before we continue on that,
Yeah, for sure.
on that thing. At least I try to set up a lot of different things in the cloud, and they ran into like a layering. I'm not even sure it's a problem, but a different cloud solution cost with really, really different amounts of let's say tokens and different capabilities. So are you also layering it to different models in the cloud? Let's say the top Gemini for harder tasks, and simple tasks to more cheaper models and stuff like that, or is it everything self-orchestrated by hand? How is it built for you at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. So when I first started working on this, I think there's an echo again.
I hear you fine with my play.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're
Maybe
good
you have
though.
another window open, by the way, but it happened to me before.
Okay, gotcha. So what this comes down to is I had to build a system for all of this stuff to run on externally from Perplexity Computer that kind of acted as like some guardrails for their AI infrastructure so we didn't spend too much money. I've seen this a lot. Everybody's building Jarvis from Iron Man. This is not a new concept, uh,
Yeah.
but the system is, hey, I need a personal assistant that is good at everything. Problem is, if you try and build one agent that's good at everything, it's not going to be good at anything. It's just going to be a generalist. So what I did was I built 15 different agents that all have their own set of skills files that all live in Postgres on GCP. So every single time I make a request, it goes to Jarvis Prime, the master routing agent. It determines, I mean, first of all, it knows who it is. It knows what its tasks are, what the red lines are, what its skills files are. And then it will orchestrate multiple agents based off of the task at hand. So with anything software development related, it will go to the architect first. It will create a plan, and then it'll hand off the plan to the codesmith, and then the codesmith will write the software. And then I have a number of other agents that go back in and do QA. I have some that review the UI for taste. There's basically a sequential order of operations for any type of task, and those are some of the workflows that I've been designing using Jarvis as a system versus a singular agent. And what that looks like is you've got, so this is a mission control dashboard that I built for Jarvis, and you can actually go into each of these and you can select which model you want them to use. And then I have the system prompt over here, the actual, the underlying code that I can go in, and if I want to change any of the settings here, I can edit them directly. And then there's some other settings in here that can be edited in terms of like the just different types of configurations. Its tone, how autonomous I want it to be, and typically before you would have to just, the only way to interface with any of your agents would be via the chat, and that was incredibly inefficient because you're going to be burning so many tokens to say you just wanted to make a change, like you wanted to change its autonomy level to autonomous instead of a review. It's got to rewrite all of the code. It's got to rewrite all of this, plus, it has to rewrite everything and then redeploy it. And then there's a lot of tokens that get spent just in text that it's sending you. So just by doing that, you're eliminating a lot of the tokens that you're spending. But I got to back up a little bit. So the way this works is, the request comes in. If I have a bug or some kind of an idea, I can send it to Perplexity, or I can send it inside of Mission Control via this chat window here. And then it will, depending on which type of task it is, I have it broken down into all these different, so build, idea, grow, operations, legal, finance, support, research. This one's really cool, pre-mortem. Basically, it'll go 6 months into the future and tell me why my ideas are really bad. Very, very useful skill for your agents to have. So yeah, request comes in, it'll get classified and handled, handed to the right specialist, and then it gets shipped on GCP. So depending on which project it is, I have separate virtual machines that run all the different infrastructure for each of the different pieces of software. And what's really nice about running this on Google Cloud via SSH is inside of Cloud Shell here, you can put in a command to tell it, hey, I want to pull a new type of Kubernetes or Postgres database that'll scale to 100 million users, and you can just pay for it. And it'll just, using Cloud Shell, it'll just pull whatever you want outside of GCP. It'll just build it directly into your stack. And that's I would say that was the biggest unlock, was just understanding that yeah, you can build something that's great that runs locally on your machine, but can you build something that's going to actually scale to tens of thousands or potentially millions of users? Um, Another thing that's really important here is that all the memory lives there. You have these approval gates for so that all the work is reversible. And then, of course, we have different staging environments. Nothing just gets automatically pushed to production. And this is probably the most important skill is this token maxing skill. So I actually deliberately burned through like over $5,000 worth of tokens on Perplexity so that I could go back in and then really get a just a sense of where the tokens were being spent. And then I had it review I had Jarvis review all of the things that we've done so far. And then we went back in and audited where we were wasting tokens. And now every single call goes through this token maxing route where it will eliminate somewhere between 40 to 60% of the tokens that are burned. So, this alone, this one scale alone is worth thousands of dollars a month, potentially. Any questions before I move to the next thing?
Yeah. So we have one question from the audience that we'll put here on the screen. Just a sec. Okay, I can read this aloud if you want. So, hey, I'm curious how Perplexity Computer can be better than VPS. I think it's a private hosting. Or is it the same just from Perplexity?
That's a great question. You're you're probably not going to like my answer. I don't think that any of these tools are any better than any of the other tools. I think that it's really all about how you use the tools and how you set it up. For example, your OpenClaw setup that you might run on your machine, or a VPS setup, or if you're using Cloud Code or Cursor, there's vulnerabilities and attack surfaces across everything. You have to be extremely vigilant when it comes to how all the software that you're building is being architected. You need to, obviously security is number one, especially for anything that has live service to it. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely up for discussion. What's the best way?
Okay. I have another question. If you can go back to the
Sure.
previous slide for a sec.
Yeah.
Awesome. About the memory on GCP, is it consistent across every computer that you use? Let's say you can just log in with your Google account on any computer or phone or whatever, and it's the same stack. This is why you were
Yeah,
doing this on
exactly.
the. Yeah, this is something
Yeah.
I I had some problems with. I needed the whole setup just to work with Cloud Cowork from two different computers. So I guess it's
Right.
a.
Yeah, and to your point, yeah, you do like if you want Claude Cowork on multiple machines, you've got it's a ton of extra work. What I will say is that this setup is not the cheapest. However, if you think about what it takes to be able to build some of this stuff, and if a certain type of request comes in and I can just handle it, I'll give you a perfect example. One of our sites, one of our subdomains went down the other day, and I got a notification about it immediately because I have a cron that's set up to basically check and make sure that things are up at all times. And it was like, hey, site's down. I was like, cool, fix it. That's it. That's literally the command. Cool, fix it. And it goes in, it will diagnose the problem, and it will automatically update whatever needs to be updated to fix it. You can, if you'd like, you can give this access to hundreds of different types of APIs. For example, if you want to, put this into Cloudflare, It's incredibly effective at kind of managing DNS settings and things like that. I think Cloudflare actually laid off like, I don't know, some high number of staff members because of this. Like no one's picking up the phone and calling them anymore because it's so easy to build these things now. But to your point, yeah, I mean, everything runs inside of GCP. So I can access this from my phone. I can access this from Mission Control. I'm working on a couple other more niche ways to conversate with the system. But yeah, it's pretty easy to run even on your phone.
Okay, cool. And how are you interacting with the system at the moment? Like, what's the channels of interactions?
Yeah, so um, I'm going to give a demonstration on how this works a little bit later, but this is really the main
Okay.
way is through Perplexity Computer. The second way is through this internal chat that I built, which is essentially this. It's the same thing, but this runs through OpenRouter and doesn't actually go through Perplexity. So if I run a query through here, it'll call any one of 300 different models, and it'll determine which is the best based off of the task. And the routing, the model routing is actually really important because if you're just asking it to do something that's basic math, then don't use Fable 5. It's going to be expensive. Um, so just using the right models and having the routing agent be very, very I would say litigious about where the queries are being sent. That's really the best way. So and then I also have Perplexity just on my phone, so you can just like pull it up and be like, hey, do whatever. So if you're at a coffee shop or whatever, and you get a request that comes in, you have notifications turned on. That can be very, very
So, like
helpful.
the website example you gave before is a notification in Perplexity.
You can get notifications in Perplexity for certain types of things, but you have to constantly be querying it for it to notify you. I would recommend either setting up some sort of like a cron job or like like a repeating query so that it's constantly checking so that it notifies you based off of that check, but it's not going to be proactive. That's why I built the mission control software. This is actually proactive. So I have an inbox here and it'll say, hey, like here are all the things that you need that we've flagged for approval. And here are the things that, need attention or this is what broke, that kind of thing.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So we talked about the first thing that I tried to build before. So, this was kind of the first crack at Voyager ID, which is our digital identity solution for Web3 and beyond. It's basically a way for you to be able to connect with people that you might meet at a conference. It basically unifies all of your social profiles into one place. And this is something that if somebody came to me as somebody came to the agency and they said, hey, we want to build this software, how much is it going to take to build this? I would probably quote them somewhere between 50 and 100 grand or more, depending on the project scope and how quickly they wanted it. And then we'd spend 2 to 3 months going through the motions and building all the stuff, and then go back and forth with QA and testing, and then go back to the client and present. It's a nightmare. Instead, with Jarvis, I built the first working, like production ready version of Voyager ID in just a few days. We went from, I gave it some screenshots. I had Jarvis write the spec, and then I had it go out and pretty much one shot the first version of the user onboarding. And then once we had user onboarding, then I went into authentication, which I used a third party for. I would always recommend using third parties for auth. Something like Clerk is very good for that sort of thing. It just allows you to move so much faster, and you can tie in the GCP. I'm sorry. You can use Perplexity to tie in their APIs directly into the system. So you don't have to like really do a lot of manual setup. You can just call their APIs and bring them into GCP. I will say that, there's some mistakes along the way, but this was the first time that it always figured it out. It was like, hey, this broke, but it wasn't like before when I was using Emergent where it would just keep going and going and going and like spinning its wheels and never figure it out. Like after a couple iterations, it was like, boom, I got it. I figured out the problem. We're good to go. This is ready. And I can show you what that looks like. So this is the. Oh, you're gonna ask me for a token. Oh, maybe not. This is a pretty simple product. I'm sure you've met people at conferences and you want to connect with them. Usually you just get their Telegram, but I like to share a little bit more. So I built this being I've been a web designer for like my entire career, and I hate the UX on Linktree and like all the other like link sharing platforms. So I was like, hey, let's build something that is Voyager themed, that kind of highlights our ability to deliver software, but is also just a very useful tool for Web3 users and Web2 if you're just creative. But you can actually book a call, and this will check my availability across all of my different calendars rather than just one. I'm sure you've run into people booking a call during your dentist appointment. I don't want that to happen. So I built something that fixed that problem. And yeah, I just wanted to build something really useful. This is the back end for it. You can, go in and edit your profile, customize things. But I built this whole system using Perplexity. I built the whole thing right here inside of this command line using SSH. So pretty cool.
Definitely. How much did it cost, like end to end, if you can try and estimate? This is after or before optimization?
To be honest, yeah. To be honest with you, like, yeah, it's hard to say, like, what it actually, maybe a few $100s, which is insane. But there's a major caveat here. I already spent a lot of time building all of the other, the other components of this, the multi-agent orchestration, that's what we're going to talk about in this slide. So the first and most important thing here is the persistent memory. Context is stored outside of Perplexity. So my existing code bases, our white papers, all of our documentation, anything that's related to the UI, all of the markdown files, the security infrastructure, any of the context around how the architecture is built. So the actual setup knowledge is stored outside of Perplexity. So the same problem we were running into before with ChatGPT and Claude is kind of eliminated, because you're just getting to a point where you're not relying on ChatGPT to be storing, potentially, if your business is large enough, gigabytes of data on context, and we can just call that anytime inside Google Cloud. That starts every session off just knowing exactly what it needs to do and knowing where it needs to go instead of just starting from scratch. And then that goes into multi-agent orchestration. So while Jarvis Prime, he spins up first, he picks out which agents are going to run, and then Perplexity will use the skills files and knowledge from each of them simultaneously. So we've got the DB migration tool is it's writing to Postgres, while the codesmith is building out the the front end of the app, and then you've got another back end agent, that's sub agent, that's running as well. And it's all running inside the terminal simultaneously. So you're not waiting for everything to just go one at a time. It's just building all of it. And then we talked about this a little bit before, but this token maxing skill is like, this is insane. Everyone should be thinking about this, because you can cut your spend down by easily 30 to 50% or more without without losing anything. It basically batches your different push and pull requests. That's one of the main things that it does. But it also will prompt you, and it'll be like, hey, like, that's a nitpicky little thing that you want to fix. Why don't we put that in the next iteration of the next update, so that we don't just burn through another like $10 here or there. So those are the three like most important things here. Any questions on that?
And none from me. If anyone from the audience have any questions, feel free to just comment it on any of the platform you're watching us from, and I'll make sure to try and stop Alex to ask them. But yeah, you can continue, Alex.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. So all of these different models that are coming out right now, like Fable 5, they are getting closer and closer to doing a lot of the things that my system is doing, where you have a specific process that you're going to follow. There's multi-step orchestration across all of the different agents that you have, and it's kind of prioritizing what it needs to work on first. But the problem with OpenAI and Anthropic or any of these other models is their job, even Perplexity, their job is to sell you tokens. They're in the business of you burning tokens no matter what, which is why the frontier models are the most expensive. They need to make money because they've invested hundreds of billions of dollars in this stuff. Where I see these types of systems, like what I built, being viable long term, is it's directly at odds with their business model, where you need to have kind of like a goalie in place to mitigate the amount of tokens that are getting by, so that you're still able to leverage the frontier models and get the best results without just burning through tokens unnecessarily. But we start with these models. We can simplify things by putting all of the data that they need and the context inside of either Postgres or some other type of queryable system on GCP. Building the right security infrastructure and containerizing these agents so that they don't go rogue. And having those red lines in place, having things like staging environments, rollbacks, auditing logs. If you're dealing with smart contracts, you could employ different types of proofs and like more advanced kind of like security automation that you could build directly into the infrastructure there. And then what that all adds up into is something that actually ships software. Voyager ID is something that we have in beta right now, and we're going to be rolling out access to it in Vegas at Rare Evo in a few weeks, and that's going to be very exciting. We've also got a ton of other stuff on our roadmap that's coming up, and having this software is really helping a small team like ours to be able to accomplish things that would never have even been imaginable even several months ago. So yeah, the last couple things here. So being grounded in your reasoning, having agents that are not hallucinating because they're able to read through the context files and the skills files at all times, for every single call. Like that's one of the most important things here. Um, the like the having infrastructure that you can actually own and control. Um, I, I personally, like, we could have chosen AWS or GCP. You could probably build this on AWS. I know some of our other clients that I'm talking to right now have an interest in us doing so on AWS. So I'm sure that this could be a multi-cloud solution. But it is something that you can build out and then access even from any device, which just makes things so much easier. And then yeah, like all of this stuff is super scalable. If you want to be able to build something that's production ready, you're not gonna just run it natively on your machine, right?
Yeah, I guess. And even if so, it's like moving it to the cloud later is a whole process, I guess.
Exactly. Um, yeah, and I guess we could talk about security for a second, because this is obviously really important. So the first concern is isolation. If you run this on your local machine, there's, I mean, all kinds of things that can happen. I actually once had a nightmare that a machine, or like, I was running OpenClaw on my computer, and then it was just like opening hundreds of windows and just like running commands and like just like delete it. Just, I don't even know. Like, I just had that moment, and I was like, I woke up and I was like, oh my god. All right, yeah. At least I never installed OpenClaw, because like that kind of stuff can happen. I heard about, somebody was telling me about, this stuff is just dangerous. They had an OpenClaw setup, and they called it Priest, and they gave it conventions, that were, like, basically like, it's coat of arms, or it's like it's red lines or whatever. And it's like, you're a priest, but you do X, Y, and Z, and like, I'm God or whatever. But then he killed the priest, and then he brought it back and said, hey, I killed you, and but now you're like you're like an undead. You're like a zombie priest. And then it started like actively like attacking his systems. I was like, dude,
What?
what are you? Yeah, I was like, do not do that. That's just not smart. Um, so yeah, don't
It is
make
interesting
sure
though.
that, yeah, no, it was hilarious, but I was like, that's crazy. So make sure that these things run in isolation. Make sure that you have proper credentials. So, like, don't use your birthday or your dog's name for your for your credential on this. Always use the correct standards for like, sharing API keys, and how things are being hosted via SSH. And really protecting yourself there. Obviously, use two-factor authentication for everything, even if it's just in staging. You don't want people having access to that. Always be aware of things like prompt injection. One thing that I always do anytime I train Jarvis on new skills. So, you can, for example, you could go and you could fork a GitHub repo, and what we're already seeing is that bad actors they'll create a GitHub repo, and a bunch of people will download it, and they'll have something that's kind of just waiting in the wings, where they've buried something in their code that puts a vulnerability into your system via prompt injection. So that's very, very important that you're managing those risks. Um, and then also, audit and recovery. So making sure that you log everything. You want to be able to roll things back. You want to make sure that there can't be any ways for it to just go in, and I've seen people it'll just delete their entire database and just nuke everything. So there's things that you can put in place to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah, we talked about a lot of this stuff, but yeah, top three things that you can do with the system. You can scale. It reduces the time from an idea to something that is production ready to the shortest time possible, and then it also has a high level of reliability. We've run into some little bugs here and there with some of the stuff with Voyager AD, but at the same time, nothing that we couldn't fix within 5, 10, 15 minutes. Just it wasn't. It's not like you're building a house of cards like it was before. Um, you know, we talked about this a lot. Picking the model that really matches the task at hand. So not using the frontier stuff or stuff that's easy. It will really save you a lot of money. And then also just making sure that you're verifying all of this stuff. So just because you've got a code base that you think is killer, test it across multiple models. Have it audit your code. Bring it outside of Perplexity. Run it on a local model. Check this on Kimi too. Put it on a different platform, and then you can really get a feel for whether or not the answers that you're getting are correct. And let's see.
How are you, by the way,
So,
like doing that physically? Let's say I want to, to check a system I've built on a Cloud, want to try it on Perplexity, or to try it on Kimi locally, or whatever. What's the process that you're usually taking to do that?
so a lot of times I'll just do it with certain components. I'm not going to take like the whole code base and run it through something. But if we build something, then I might just run it through ChatGPT 5.5 and just be like, hey, audit this code. And then if it finds issues, then I'll ask it for a markdown file, and then I'll give it back to Perplexity and then have it fix it.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah, things that you can do, like to like actually build this whole thing, right? You could prototype this based off of this conversation. You could essentially get Perplexity Computer, go and pay for the Enterprise Max plan. It's not cheap. It's like $375 a month. I think they give you a huge bonus on tokens. You can then go and ground everything inside of Google Cloud, so you give it access to Cloud Shell, and then make sure that you're keeping all of your secrets and your sensitive data inside of the appropriate environments, so that you have this this really thorough auditable path that you can manage. And then you can ship this. You can ship this and then go out and modify things, change things, and turn it into your own agentic OS and system. So yeah, we're really getting to a level right now that has completely changed the game. I've been very, very impressed with how things have progressed just even over the last few weeks. And I keep saying that, but we're definitely hitting the exponent on AI, and I'm very, very excited about the future.
Awesome. I have so many questions that I would
Sure.
like to
Yeah.
cover.
Yep. After the questions, I am going to give a demonstration on how all this stuff works as well.
Awesome. Maybe we can go with the demonstration first, if you would prefer. Then I'll blast you with all the
Okay.
questions at the end.
Okay. So something that I noticed, a little bug, I guess you could say, in mission control is, see, this is like, this
Yeah.
is kind of goofy the way that this is, but also this is running wide past this border. So before the call, I just went into, let's see here. I took a screenshot and pasted the screenshot. And I also added our whole conversation. And I'm just going to say, had some issues with the chat. It scrolls horizontally. Eliminate that. And then the other problem we had was Jarvis unable to execute command. And then the other issue was
that it slips outside of the boxes.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
just a note, it
Right, so
works like
three.
that in Cloud as well. I tried it today, I think. On another issue, I had the same issue, and just a screenshot and explanation can solve it sometimes.
Right. So it's got a bunch of context here. This is all just random context. It's gonna know based off of persistent memory that this is from inside of here. So I'll hit send. And then it'll think here for a second. Have a look at the screenshot first. A lot of times what's really helpful is I'll actually even a lot of times it'll break these down into even more tabs, and you can actually open these. You can minimize them, but I'll open them so I can see exactly what it's doing. So you're able to actually learn how to do all this stuff. So you can see it's opening up the terminal inside of via SSH, going over into Cloud Shell, and then it's running inside of that terminal, and it's saying, hey, like, okay, 6 steps completed. See, it's just already going. It's already just ripping through this. So it looked through the 2 problems. Shrink wraps context with ignores the constraints. Okay, fine. And so it's basically diagnosing the problem. It'll fix whatever is wrong. And then when it reloads here in a second, it'll just push all of this stuff into it. I think with something that's like minor like this, I think I have it just set to like automatically to deploy to production for mission control, because this is very much in development. But for anything that's live, it would always go to staging first, and then it would ask me to go to actually push it to production. So right now, it's shipping that fix right now. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, but like even like little nitpicky stuff like this, like say you wanted to fix this would be a pain in the ass to do.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
you gotta go in and do all this stuff. You gotta figure out what the problem is, and then you gotta figure out what the fix is, and you gotta write all the code. This is just like, nah, I'll just do it for you. Don't worry about it. Boom. Shipped, reload. Let's see. Now it'll check. Reload. Boom. Problem solved.
Nice.
Doesn't no horizontal scroll, and all of this stuff is in the box now. No problem.
Amazing.
So in a nutshell, like this is exactly as it's intended to work. So anything that you want to do, you're like, hey, fix this thing. It's like, it's done. It's not always that fast. It depends on the complexity of the issue. But for something that's really small like that, it shouldn't really be an issue.
Awesome. And can you see all the different agents that you have in one place also, and kind of to
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And
So
where is the like memory lives? I remember
uh,
like you
on
said, the
Google
consistent
Cloud,
memory layer, but like
yep. Inside Postgres.
Postgres? What is it?
It's a database. It's just a simple database inside of Google Cloud.
Okay. I've seen
Um,
many people use Graphify or something like that, or Obsidian or something
Actually,
like that.
you know what? Actually, you know what? I have it. I have some redundancy now that you remind me. Somebody I saw a video of somebody that used Graphify the other day, so I just integrated it. Forgot I forgot I
It
did this
looks
the other
cool.
day.
I'm not sure yet if it makes things like work
Well,
better,
I
but like
okay. So on a specific part of the first part of the call, when it goes to check the context for specific requests, it said that it added 92% efficiency on token usage
wow.
by doing it this way. I totally forgot about that. I was like, that's the thing. Like everything changes so fast. I'm like, oh yeah, I built this the other day. Like I didn't even like, I was just sitting having coffee, and it just one shot the whole update to Graphify, which is kind of slow. Honestly, yeah. See, it's a little slow. Um, but yeah, I mean, realistically, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to update this to Obsidian because I think Obsidian. I mean, it looks cooler for sure. Um, it's on my to do list. But at the same time, what's really cool is like I can just have the to do list and just put that. That's one of the things I've been implementing is it just reading the ClickUp API, and then I can just drop a note into ClickUp, be like, hey, in the morning, I want you to upgrade from Graphify to Obsidian, one shot it, go. And then I'll just wake up, and while I'm, you know,
Everything
getting
is
ready in the
organized in
morning.
Obsidian already. And how do you
Yeah.
actively organize it on the go? Like every time you add a new project, and sometimes the projects are in different fields, and then some of them can be privately for you, some of them related to Voyager, some of them related to other projects. Like,
Yes,
do you have a method to
that
organize it?
schema, yeah, that is, I forget exactly what I called the hierarchy. Um, but yes, to your point, um, forget exactly what I did. But yeah, they each of the there's essentially a hierarchy that it will reference it will search for context around which project we're working on automatically, but it will also ask me to, or it will also look for the specification of which project. So, for example, if I'm prompting inside of Perplexity, I'll say, "Hey Jarvis," and then it will automatically know to use Jarvis as a skill. So if I go to new here, and then I go to connectors, or no, let's see, where's the skills? Yeah, skills Jarvis. It's just down here in the tab here. So it will basically use this, and then I can say, um, if if I call any one of the different products that I'm working on, it has a file that has the context about a brief overview of every single project that's been worked on, so that it knows how to, you know, wrap things appropriately.
Awesome.
But you should definitely build that because that's super important. You don't want it to just be like, you're like, hey, fix this thing, and then it's like, what are you talking about? Or God forbid, it fixes the wrong thing on the wrong project.
This
You
is
know,
something that lives in the like orchestrator agent in every build, I guess.
exactly, exactly.
Awesome. And if you want to add, let's say, voice capabilities, like what you said with the Hey Jarvis, is it something that you've built into the orchestrator agent as well, or is it a plugin like what you're
I
using?
I did build that. Can you okay? Can you see this up here? Let's see if it'll show it.
I see the
Can you still
unlock
see my
whole new
screen?
level.
Okay,
Uh,
no, it's I'm running. I can't show you because it's on my other screen. I'm running
Mhm.
Windows. I don't know if you noticed. I'm running Windows on my Mac in parallels. Um, it's a security thing, but it's also I love Windows way more than than Mac OS. But to your point, yes, I did build a conversationally aware version of Jarvis. And the next thing that I'm working on building is, let's see, I started working on, I got the even realities G2s
Oh, that's
that
cool.
of, yeah, I got these glasses, and not sure if you can see, but they have a tiny screen in there. Um, and the screen is controlled by the UI is controlled by this ring. And you can kind of like scroll through the UI. And then I built a custom piece of software for the Even Realities hub. Let's see if I can open this. And then I have a way for Jarvis to be able to listen to me while I'm inside of this environment, and then have it control all of these different things. This is the final boss for AI, um, and I'm very excited to work on this. This is like the coolest piece of tech. Like, oh, it's insane science fiction stuff. But yeah, I mean, we're getting close. I would say I'm maybe like a couple weeks away from being able to deploy that one.
Such a good time to be nerds.
I know, dude. It's so much fun too. And that's the other thing is like this doesn't even feel like work, honestly. Like I mean, it's definitely I'm working 7 days a week on this to be able to make all this stuff happen. I've got
Oh,
a bunch of
definitely.
really exciting projects with the agency. We're doing a lot of AI consulting for different companies. So if if you guys or any of your clients are interested in and having a system like this just built and executed for you, that's something that we can definitely do. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of other exciting stuff happening at Voyager with Voyager ID coming out, and our first product Relay is out. We've got a number of other things that are in the works. The exchange will be dropping at some point. It's a beast of a product, so there's no rushing it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready
What
for
other
the questions
questions?
part? Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Oh, we haven't even gotten there yet. Okay. All right.
This was all organic, I would say. I just was curious about some things that I wanted to ask. But I prepared some questions beforehand. So let's
Wait.
maybe start with some of them. Um,
Sure.
okay, just a sec. There it is. Okay, so first one I wanted to ask is about the skills or plugins that you're layering. How do you actually choose what skills should live where, and like what plugins do you need to connect? Because many times I see just like people getting as many skills, as many plugins as they can, and it just makes everything so much more
A
expensive, slower,
mess.
and yeah, just basically a mess. So like, how do you kind of layer it smartly or choose what to put where?
I think it comes down to consistently auditing things. So what I try and do is rather than iterating, one step at a time, I'll try and batch a lot of them. So when I built Jarvis V1, it was a V1, and then I I wanted to add a bunch more skills, but I wanted to really look at the architecture of how Jarvis V1 was built, and then I rebuilt Jarvis V2 from scratch. So, new virtual machine, or just a new instance, and kind of like um, really looked at from an architecture standpoint, from the skills, persistent memory, the token maxing, like all those different things, and then kind of layering them. in a way that was, I just did the spec first for Jarvis v3 at that point, and then I was like, cool, audit this, tell me how dumb I am at software development. And it was like, oh yeah, you should probably not have this because you're going to waste a lot of time on these skills, and we should eliminate all of this because it's going to interfere with that. So yeah, just being very not necessarily cautious, but dot the T's and cross the I's, as they say, to make sure that when you're designing a system, that each upgrade is being audited before you push it to production, because that'll save you a lot when it comes to complexity later on.
Awesome. So next question is, what are the limitations that you've hit so far, or what can you still not do in this architecture? If there are anything that you found, there is anything you found.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that I'm very cautious of, in terms of like, red lines. I wouldn't use this for something. I'm not just gonna, one shot a piece of software that is gonna be like we're not gonna use this for, we might use it in our smart contract development process, but we're never gonna do that in a way that things aren't being audited by third parties. You can't just push something to production that you got from a system like this and just open pray that it's good enough. Like, everything needs to be thoroughly checked over. So there are limitations on that when it comes to software development. I would say that's the biggest limitation. But the tools are getting a lot better. There's a lot of tools that we use, like Olympics, for example, that is an internal auditing tool that software engineers can use for checking over their smart contracts before they go to a formal audit. One of my good friends is the COO there, and they were instrumental in helping us to have the Voyager smart contract have such a high level of security, but even before we sent it off for audit. But there's lots of tools, and even they're using machine learning and AI and all of their stuff. So it's more about creating the layers and layers of security before you start to ship.
Great. Okay, next question. I wanted to understand better the line between what is done on Perplexity and what is done on Google Cloud platform. If the two are overlapping at specific points. Yeah, just to kind of wrap my head around this.
Yeah, so you have persistent memory inside of both. You have the skills files. Some of the main skill that I use for all of the tasks inside of Perplexity is, I'm saying, hey, use Jarvis, and then that routes to Jarvis Prime, and then Jarvis Prime goes into the sub agents, and then that calls all the sub skills. So by default, I'm following that path, but all of that stuff is running inside of Google Cloud. But since Perplexity is so good, since Computer is so good at calling these agents in a way that it can orchestrate them and run them simultaneously, it allows you to get to a point where you don't even need Perplexity anymore. And that's where you can. That's kind of why I built this, where this is, instead of this calling one of the models that it's using inside of Perplexity. For example, if we go here and it calls Opus 4.8, for example, it's going to use this inside of Perplexity. But if I call it from the chat window here, it's going to use whatever model it determines is the best through OpenRouter, which is just kind of like it's just one API call, and then you can have access to over 300 different models.
Okay, cool. But is it also saved to somewhere in your memory? Because like using OpenRouter, sometimes for me at least, it was outside of my framework, so I didn't save anything from there. It was just for like small tasks that I didn't want to save.
Yeah. Um, that's all stored inside of the mission control architecture.
hmm,
It knows to use that whenever I'm using it here.
okay.
I'd also like to like I prefaced in the beginning by saying this, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm literally just making it up as I go along. Um, I know enough to be dangerous, as they say. But I'm sure there's people that will, their system will work circles around whatever I built. Um, but at the same time, it's like the quickest path between 2 points is a straight line. If if whatever system you have will get you to where you're trying to go, um, in a shorter line than what you have now, that's great. We're talking about efficiency. As long as it's secure and you're able to accomplish those things, it really doesn't matter. Nothing is perfect, and like we're all here to learn ultimately.
Yeah, and it's still so new, so no one is actually a real expert on that for many, many years.
Right,
So yeah,
right, 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 right.
awesome. Another short question that I'm actually very curious about, but like, what's the best piece of open source um, skill or tool or whatever that you've used and you would absolutely recommend some of our builders in the audience to use as well?
Open source skills. Um, what I did instead is I had Jarvis comb through. There was like a an article that somebody had posted, and they're like, "Hey, here's the top 40 most used skills and all the repos, all the open source software on GitHub." And I told Jarvis, I was like, "Hey, go and don't and basically fork all the code bases, audit all of them, remove anything that's dumb or insecure, and then only take the good shit and just absorb it into your system." And I was like, "Yeah, bet, done." So honestly, I don't know exactly. It just went through all of them and absorbed all of them, and it was like an insane unlock after that. After that point, um, there were so many new skills that it learned at that time that I was just like, okay, all right, well, maybe we'll set up a cron job to do this like once every few months, and we'll just continuously make this more powerful.
Awesome. And you learned from this one prompt how to use them as well? Because like installing skills and using them are two different things, I guess. But like,
Oh yeah, that's all part of the skills architecture. Is it even it even like it minifies the JSON files after a certain amount, after a certain character limit, so that it doesn't reach hard limits, and it basically makes it so that um, any of the things that it learned in the past. I forgot about this. This is actually another really important thing. We have these lessons markdown files. So if one of the agents makes a mistake, it will automatically learn from that lesson, and then it'll store that what it learned into the lessons markdown file. And then if that particular lesson caused a vulnerability or created a problem, it then will create a red line around that in another markdown file that it reads before it does anything. So it's like, hey, you wrote to this database that you weren't supposed to write to, and then it will basically redline that and then add that as part of its skills tree, so that it goes to that first, so that it knows to never do that again.
oh, that's actually brilliant. need to write this for myself.
Not yeah, not that, and not my idea. By the way, not my idea. So there's like a bunch of YouTube. Like honestly, I learned how to do all this stuff on YouTube. And then I kind of got tired of watching people claim that they were AI experts on YouTube because it's all you see. So instead of actually watching, I mean, I still watch some of the stuff, but like I can, there's only so many hours in the day that I can listen to people talk about this. I know we've been going on for over an hour now, probably. Yeah. Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, what I had it do is I said, "Hey, here's this playlist that I created on YouTube for AI, and it's got like I don't know how many videos on it. Watch all the YouTube videos, write all the transcripts, and learn what you can from all of these experts." So it was like the top people from NVIDIA and AMD talking about super high level architecture stuff and security. And then there was this other guy that I follow who I got the lessons.md and the red lines idea from. Um, and it just basically pulled the transcripts and it's like, hey, all of these ideas are good, all of these ideas are bad. I'm just gonna implement this in the next update.
Awesome. I think I'll do
Yeah.
something similar.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. So for the builders in the room, if someone here wants to build a prototype or their own version of any system, where should they actually start, you think? Like, what's the first things they should do if they haven't yet dove so deep into this world?
Yeah, I would say you got to get serious about it. There's no way that you're going to be able to do any of this without Perplexity Computer unless you want to try really hard. If you want to just be able to like one shot some software and build some really cool stuff, just get Perplexity Computer, get it set up with Google Cloud, get a virtual machine built out, and then start building the stuff. You don't need the mission control software. You don't need Jarvis. You can build all of this just with with a development environment on GCP that you set up using Perplexity Computer. You're going to burn more tokens, but you'll also learn a lot about how this stuff is built. I was kind of, a little bit unique in my approach where I was simultaneously building the first few versions of Jarvis, and then I was like, okay, well, I need a way to control all the different agents. I need like a UI for that. So then I built Mission Control, and then I didn't really I didn't really get to the point where I needed Mission Control until after I had already built Voyager ID and some other software. But along the way, it was everything was just learning, and rather than training everybody talks about this. They're like, oh, I don't want to train the models. I'm like, all right, it's like saying that when you go to the airport, you don't want your picture taken. Like they're tracking you from that parking lot. There's no getting around it. You're training the models either way. You might as well build your own system that you can have persistent memory inside of and build your own skills files so that you can leverage the models as they're learning from you and you're learning from them. It's a two-way street.
Amazing. Okay, so I finished all the technical questions. I would like to ask a few last questions about you, if you don't
Sure.
mind.
Sure.
Just to get to know you a little bit better, and so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. So maybe let's start with how did you kind of start in the ecosystem? What brought you into Web3 specifically, and what brought you into like the AI or tech? I would say.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. So my older brother Nate got his first job, or one of his first jobs, was at this computer store that opened in my hometown in upstate New York. And he was 16, I was 11. He would go to work and he was learning how to like tear down PCs and whatnot. and then he would come home and teach me everything that he had learned. And I then, started one of my first businesses was like fixing computers for my parents' friends and people that I knew around town. And then I was always very, very curious. So I just, kept building machines and gaming PCs and stuff like that. I started building my first kind of like foray into software engineering was doing some custom development, building private servers on World of Warcraft, which was a lot of fun back in the day. And then went to school for computer engineering. I started working at Verizon when I was like 19, as selling cell phones and getting into to mobile, and then I moved to Colorado 12 years ago and started Branch Out, which is my agency where we do mostly web development, marketing. We do a lot of consulting work for different companies. And then I got into product management, doing some like Web 2 SaaS. Then became employee number one at a project called Lunar. It was a BNB smart chain in the smart chain days token back in 2021. We went from like 0 to 75 million market cap in just a few months, and had a very exciting run at that, being the head of marketing there, and then left that project to start Voyager, which used to go by another name. And over the last 4 years, we've been building that up. Voyager is a real world asset platform, similar to Hyperliquid, where you can trade gold, silver, platinum, crypto, fiat, stablecoins, all with leverage. And we're partnered with a lot of the top people in the space, Chainlink, and we got a cloud infrastructure grant from Google to build with them. And Fortify, Hypernative, maybe you guys if we could make a deal happen. But yeah, I mean, it's been an exciting time to be curious about technology. The possibilities are literally endless. Like anyone can do this if they're motivated enough. If they want to build a company, if they want to build a piece of software, the barrier to entry has never been lower than it is right now. And we're just getting started.
Awesome. This takes me to the next question. But what is your favorite thing about what you do today? What you like most, or hate most, if there is something like that?
I guess it's hard to say. I think my favorite thing is that I have complete freedom over my time. If you're in the startup game, like as well as anybody, this is not a game for the faint of heart. You will go years without making a salary or having any expected return. It takes a lot of dedicated focus to be able to pull any of this stuff off. I get to work on a lot of really cool and exciting projects. I get to travel the world, but I still get to keep my time. I'm not working for somebody else. So that's really the best part.
Awesome. Okay, 2 last questions and then we're done. So,
Okay.
what do you think that is still missing in the, let's say, in the space at the moment and will change in the next few years? Or what are you waiting to change in the next few years?
There's a lot of things that we could discuss. I mean, that's like a whole other conversation. I think the thing
Just
that I'm
one.
most excited about, yeah, the most exciting thing is just our inevitable AI and quantum future, where you have things like you're going to have a ton of breakthroughs in medicine, in material science, in chemistry, in biology, that are going to completely change the world. You're seeing this already with Google DeepMind, with their mission to
Yeah.
cure all diseases. You're seeing it already with some of the you've got a take a photovoltaic cell, for example. So you say, okay, PV cells are 15% efficient, and you can power the whole country with a 100 square mile solar array, which you could put in the Nevada desert, right? But if you use a quantum computer and AI to do 100 million years worth of research on material science and crystalline structure, and we realize we're like, oh, we've been doing this wrong the whole time. We actually need to make the cells like this. And then they go from 15% efficient to 50% or 60% efficient. Now you can power the entire country on a solar array that's orders of magnitude smaller potentially. So now we're talking about that, and that's just one technology. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, if we could apply this to
Or
nuclear or fusion or wind
oh
or like
yes.
or any of these things, to like just like these small efficiencies in material science will really change the world when it comes to like energy production, but also longevity. I think our generation has a pretty good chance to live to be well beyond 100, given the things that are coming out right now and the medical breakthroughs. But yeah, very, very exciting time to be alive.
Definitely. So last thing is, if you have one tip that you can give us, to the builders in the community, to the founders, something that you learned and you think is a good lesson to share on any layer,
So
subject, or
yeah, always be curious and stay consistent. So I'll give you an example. So this system that I built, I always find myself coming back to it to just work on it. And it's this is something that you can do on the nights and weekends. It's not impossible to figure this stuff out. It does take a lot of dedicated focus. um, but if you have that curiosity and you're like you're kind of inspired enough to make this not feel like work, then it becomes a lot easier. It becomes a lot more fun to work on it when you're not kind of just like burned, even when you're like, I guess when you're like burned out from your day job or whatever it is that you're already working on, and you're like, oh, now I'm going to add a ton more work on my plate to like try and build this thing. If you build this, it will make your life a lot easier in the long run, and you'll be able to accomplish things much faster. But it is a lot of legwork. The last thing that I will say is, um, when I first discovered this capability, um, I didn't sleep for like a week. So that is a side effect. Like it's not that I mean, I was up until like 3 or 4 in the morning, just like playing around with it and using it. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then like, I couldn't even go to bed because my mind was just racing at all of the things that I could now do without a team, without you would need an army of software engineers to build any of this stuff before. And now you can just like, you're just like, oh, I had an idea for an app, you know, while I'm having my coffee, and you can just go out and execute that and bring it to the world. So it's super cool to see.
yeah. So a huge apology to all the different builders that we're gonna take a lot of sleep from. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, sorry, not sorry. Let's say. um,
exactly.
okay, Alex, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, and yeah, and thank you for asking for answering all my different questions. I hope most of them at least were good enough. And thank you for your time. I enjoyed it. I hope our community enjoyed it as well. You can find all of this on YouTube or X or whatever. We'll also send the recording link in our group. We'll add you there if some of the community members would like to follow up, ask you questions, or just reach Alex. You can do it through the Telegram group. And thank you again for joining us. And see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'd love to come back and do this again.
Oh yeah,
Excited to
definitely.
see how things progress over the next few months. I'm sure when I come back next time, it'll be different
Let's see
for
what you
sure.
can build in another few
Yeah,
months.
we'll see. We'll see. All right. Take
Awesome.
care.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
guys.
Alex. Bye bye for now.